Welcome back. Now, later this morning, the Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, and the management of the Road Accident Fund will outline the progress on interventions made to recover road accident funds viability. Over the years, the fund has been faced with financial challenges, maladministration, and of course, corruption that have led to a backlog of thousands of road accident claimants having unpaid applications. In March, a personal injury lawyer, 63-year-old Eslin Meyer, was found guilty of 61 counts of fraud and theft totaling 6.4 million rand for failure to keep proper accounting records of funds that were received by an attorney in the trust account. And to talk to us about how it all went wrong for the Road Accident Fund and also what's expected from today's announcement by the Minister of Transport, we're joined by Pieter De Bruyn, Chairperson of the Association for the Protection of Road Accident Victims. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live, Pieter.
Morning.
So the Association for the Protection of Road Accident Victims has been protecting the rights of South Africans who've been affected by the tragic events of accidents on our roads. And you, of course, have been following the developments at the Road Accident Fund. And to your knowledge, Pieter, when did things really start to go wrong at the Road Accident Fund?
Well, I think there are two sides to the story. First of all, this is a complicated agency dealing with complicated matters. And secondly, therefore, you have to do the basics well. And on both of these issues, unfortunately, the Road Accident Fund and its leadership has had some successes in terms of 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back again. And I think one needs to understand the rights of road crash victims in context. First of all, it's governed by the Constitution. Secondly, it's regulated by a law. Thirdly, it's part of the social security network, together with the UIF, the Compensation Commissioner, and some of the other grants that's being paid. And this is in the context out of 40 countries where South Africa is the 39th worst place to drive a vehicle on the road. And add to that, lastly, that about 70% of the claimants are from rural and previously disadvantaged areas. That is a very complicated constituency to protect. Now, their rights are no different to the rights to schools, the rights to hospitals. So whatever the minister and this agency is wanting to do should be seen in that light. On the positive side, they have been focusing on settling claims. They have been attempting to reduce the 55 months it takes to settle a claim. But in this process, there are 3 major concerns. The Parliament of South Africa recently rejected the road benefit scheme, which were doing away with representation, doing away with the oversight of the courts, reducing the benefits of the claimants, and the public and the public and the Parliament rejected that. Now, unfortunately, the RAF currently is trying to use the courts to make up these rules and bypass Parliament. So it's a very worrying factor for us that there's a disregard for the rule of law by the agency involved. Secondly, they are doing all in their power to reduce and limit claims. The law prescribes clearly how a claim can be submitted, whilst the RAF leadership makes up their own rules and reject claims by the thousands at the door. So I hope someone will ask the Minister of Transport 10 o'clock this morning to explain the department's approach to try and limit the public of South Africa's access to claim in terms of the Road Accident Act, which is lawful in terms of the Constitution. And then lastly, during COVID, there's been a significant deterioration of the oversight over this agency. Now, keep this in mind. It's a 3.2 billion rand a month agency, which is run with little oversight, little controls, few guardrails, and this is a significant risk to the public of South Africa. There are many positives, but setting the scene, this is the context within which a road crash victim tries to get compensated in terms of the Constitution.
So there's a lot of fraud and corruption seemingly taking place at this road accident fund. And if we look at it, a question posed to the minister by the IFP revealed that there were over 102 law firms that were reported to the Legal Practice Council for allegedly not repaying monies that were paid into their accounts as duplicates, and 40 of those still under investigation because the money hadn't been paid back. And this is just talking about monies that were paid erroneously into the accounts of these law firms. But of course, the issue of fraud and corruption really is at the heart of what is going wrong at the Road Accident Fund.
Two comments on that. Like in any profession and any industry, there are bad apples amongst attorneys. Like there are bad apples amongst teachers, politicians, government officials, and on and on. You have to view this in terms of the legal profession. There is significant controls and checks and balances. And the moment an attorney steps outside the boundaries of what's ethical and lawful, that attorney is very quickly round up and spit out by the system. So you cannot take one or two or three incidents in the context of hundreds of thousands of attorneys servicing their clients. And keep in mind, during COVID, it was plaintiff attorneys who kept the RAF system alive. They paid for medical doctors, they paid for hospital records, they paid for police records, they made sure that claims are being prepared. None of that happened with taxpayers' money. All of that happened with attorneys' money in the interest of their claimant. Now, without an attorney, this system will fail and will fall down because they co-fund this on behalf of government. At the end of this process, you have to receive payment for professional services rendered. Yes, it must be heavily guarded and it must be heavily disclosed and done in the open. So the issue of wrongdoing is dealt with. There are many legal professions doing that. But you make the point now, the worrying issue here, we are talking about everything besides the claimant, the public, and the rights of the public to be kept safe, to have a safe road, to be compensated when you lose income. We should not be talking about the RAF and the multitude and plethora of court actions going on. Why are we not talking about what would make it quicker for the public? What would make it easier for the public? How would money get quicker in the pockets of the public? The minister will make at 10 o'clock a big story about a court case they won in their eyes, limiting any legal action against them within 180 days. Now, on face value, that's true. But what the Honourable Minister is not telling the people of South Africa, you wait 180 days to get paid, and they are protected to pay you in that period after you have waited 55 months for that 180 days to start. Our concern is there are solutions on the table. There are solutions that's quite clearly been put forward, both to Parliament and to the RAF, but there seems to be little interest in actions that could save around about 400 million rand a month of taxpayers' money that can be used to compensate road crash victims. Why are we not talking about that, but all the nonsense court cases that's going on? That is our big concern in this case.
Well, I wouldn't quite say it is nonsense altogether, because I want us to talk about those solutions, but let me posit this, Pieter. I don't think that attorneys are philanthropic here, so let's just dispel of that notion. They are in it because there's money to be made in it. And also, there's no getting away from the fact that there are, as you say, rotten apples, and it's not one or two. There are many of them. Even those who are not necessarily defrauding the system are actually really making massive inroads into those payments that their clients need, because they take a large chunk of the payouts that actually go to their clients. So the attorneys are not philanthropic, absolutely not. And therefore, that is also something that needs to be looked at, and why perhaps there is need for change to make sure that in the end it is the victim that sits with the bulk of the money, not the attorneys, and money is not getting lost through fraud and corruption. But I want us to talk about those solutions. What are the solutions that you say are on the table?
There's a whole range of solutions that can be considered. One is ensure that the claims handlers within the RAF are trained well and has a handbook of mandates to settle claims within the period prescribed by law. Look at exactly the point you are saying. Look at the Contingency Fee Act agreement. Look at the caps on fees, what medical experts and attorneys can charge. And I think those sub-industries involved are very open to the fact that there can be regulation. Government keeps on complaining about the costs involved of the medical experts as well as the attorneys, but they do not use the governance structures to curb those costs. Stop talking about it and curb the costs and get everyone to agree to it. The solution is quite clear. Furthermore, look at a single panel of medical experts and don't duplicate the costs. Look at a revision of the service level agreements between all the parties. Look at how claims are submitted. Look at supplier claims. We have put forward a proposal of 12 fundamental points that are all fairly quick and fairly easy to implement, which we believe would save around about 400 million rand a month. We should start with actions like this and not try and bring solutions through the courts. And that's the only point we make. Some of these court applications are indeed incredibly frivolous and a waste of the judiciary's time. One or two are fundamental in nature. And if you look and analyze these court cases, these are the cases that the RAF loses. But that is not the point. The point is, how do we reduce 55 months waiting for your claim? How do we pay experts, lawyers, and medical doctors and highly trained professionals for their time and legitimate effort to settle a claim and that it's settled accurately? They must be paid for it, nothing more and nothing less than what's the market value for that service. And lastly, how do we bring the service to the rural areas and communities of Bochum and Jane First and Nongoma, where people are injured, but you have to go to the ivory towers of the big cities to get serviced by the RAF. This is government's duty to protect road crash victims and road users. And the system needs to get out of the fancy offices and out where the people live and where the people are injured. Those are the things we should be talking about, and not the multitude of things that's detracting from the core service. The RAF's job and duty is to receive claims, to fairly adjudicate claims, and to pay fair and just compensation. Nothing more, nothing less, and an attorney's role is also nothing more and nothing less to ensure that. And just lastly, there's this misnomer that attorneys are driving up claims and are driving up the value of the claims. No attorney on earth can do this. This is regulated by law. Once there's an agreement, a judge of the bench of the High Court, in most cases, ratifies this claim, or a claims handler from the RAF agrees to the settlement. An attorney can have no influence on the size of a claim if there's not a medical and a factual basis for it. But it seems it suits the RAF to simply blame someone else and not themselves for the state. There's lots of solutions. Therefore, I'm extremely frustrated. There's many solutions. Let's talk about that RAF and Mr. Collins Letsoalo, and not so much all the litigation that's wasting time and money.
So what's the issue with Mr. Collins Letsoalo, Pieter?
No, the issue is, unfortunately, he's not engaging the stakeholders around him. It seems as if the only way to interact with the RAF is if you do this in a court of law, fighting over some point. Why are we all not just coming together in a national conference, invite all stakeholders? There are a lot of very knowledgeable people, some of the most knowledgeable people internationally in the field of road crash victim management resides in South Africa. Let's all get together and talk about this and work out solutions. It doesn't help we do this in a court of law. After the court cases, we'll still have to talk to one another to try and find solutions. So let's get to that point.
All right, we'll see how many of the stakeholders we can speak to perhaps in the next week. But thank you so much for your input to this particular conversation. Pieter De Bruyn is the chairperson of the Association for the Protection of Road Accident Victims, talking to us about what we could expect from Minister Fikile Mbalula's announcement on progress being made at the Road Accident Fund and the financial viability of this particular institution. And of course, as I said, we will try and speak to more of the stakeholders, perhaps the RAF themselves, about what has been going on, because there is quite a lot. Just a few minutes before news, we are going to try and do training.